What's up everyone, welcome back to Lace Up Channel. My name's Mickey. In today's video, we're gonna cover why returns are the single biggest pain when it comes to managing inventory in your warehouse. We're gonna talk about what the cost is today, what you can do to remedy the cost, and how to properly track returns to make your business more efficient. Anyways, let's get right into it. For those of you in the distribution space, you know that returns only account for 5 to 8% of the orders that you ship out. That being said, they account for 30% of your operational costs. Whether it's with inventory mismatches, the cost attributed to tracking the returns, or all in lost returns because your driver lost the product, the customer took the wrong product, overall returns can be a nightmare. And most of my customers, over the course of a month after doing a physical inventory, the inventory becomes less and less accurate as those returns continue to be treated incorrectly. So in order to get your returns correct, the first step that you have to take is you have to capture the reason code for the return at the point of delivery. So most distributors that I work with, they take the product, they go to deliver it to the customer, and when they get to the customer might refuse that product. Now, what are the main refusal reasons that occur at a point of sale? Well, it's the wrong product, the wrong quantity, maybe the product was damaged on the truck, or maybe the order is refused altogether. Now, with each of these different refusal reasons, it creates a separate process for the physical return. So for example, when the item is the wrong item, so you took chocolate ice cream instead of the vanilla ice cream that was on the sales order that was supposed to have been picked and loaded onto the truck. Well, this means that now your inventory in your warehouse is over and the inventory on your truck is short for vanilla. And the inverse problem occurs with the chocolate. So the driver gets to the customer, it's the wrong item, they indicate that reason, but now your inventory is completely messed up because when that driver brings back the wrong item, if that product is given entry back into your inventory, that means that now you have an overage and a shortage for both chocolate and vanilla. So what I like to recommend for the distributors that I work with is if your drivers are gonna go out and make these deliveries, they have to indicate a refusal reason the moment that it happens. If you're not using a system today, you wanna indicate that reason on the paperwork. Now, most distributors, they bring back physical paperwork from the field at the end of the day and you do a reconciliation. Well, in that end of day reconciliation, there needs to be a handshake where you validate each and every one of these returns with their corresponding reasons so that you can properly feed the inventory back into the accounting system. Point number 2, digital documentation of returns. Now, this is a good segue from point number 1, because if you currently don't have a system, even if those returns are notated manually on the invoices, the product is brought back and somebody still has to manually reconcile the return written on the piece of paper with the physical inventory. When you have a digital system in place, you're able to not only record the refusal reason digitally, have the system track your inventory, capture images of those returns at the point of sale, and when you come back to the warehouse, you're able to digitally reconcile the returns against physical inventory. This expedites the reconciliation process for returns and the tracking of those returns by a significant margin. So moving from a manual process to a system will be extremely valuable to your business. Now at this point, you're like, Mickey, I've got a system in place. My system's been in place forever. Most distributors do, especially those of you that have got over 10 routes out in the field. You've probably been playing for a DSD system forever. The issue is that perhaps in that system you haven't implemented the way to record those refusal reasons, the way to capture the images for the product that's coming back on the truck, and a proper method to return those returns from the truck back to the warehouse. Point number 3, when the returns finally come back, it's not just about the digital reconciliation of those returns, it's about the digital movements of the inventory back to stock. Going back to my previous example, you invoiced vanilla, but you physically had chocolate on the truck. The moment that that driver indicates that it's the wrong item, your system should move the virtual vanilla, which never was really on the truck, back to inventory. This fixes the inventory in your WMS or in your accounting system. Now the 10 chocolate, those cannot be put back into inventory because they never actually left the virtual inventory from your WMS or your ERP. By having a system, you know that those 4 chocolate were the consequence of picking the wrong item, which means when you return those 4 chocolate and you put them back into the warehouse, there should be no movements done in the system of record. That product needs to be reported on and it needs to be put back physically. There will be no digital process for that item. For actual returns, when the product comes because it was straight out refused, so it wasn't a mispick, the wrong quantity wasn't loaded on the truck, what should happen is that those returns should be moved back digitally by your system into a return area so that they can be reconciled against what was loaded on the truck. And then your system should have the function to scan those physical returns back and put them away into their corresponding bin locations. What I find a lot is when an entire order is refused and you're running everything by paper, well, now when you do your reconciliation, you have to account for a tremendous amount of inventory coming back into the warehouse. Whereas if you had a scanner or something that automatically populated those products and then allowed you to transfer them seamlessly back to stock, this would make you, make your inventory way more accurate. And this is what I'm talking about, I alluded to this in the beginning of the video. I said if you track returns properly, you have less inventory variances. Well, with the system that tracks them and maps them back to its slot, you definitely have less variances. Point number 4, you need a way to analyze the returns. You need some level of reporting. So over time, you've got all these different return reasons. The product was damaged, the order was refused, the item was mispicked. Well, if the item is mispicked, if it's the wrong item or the wrong quantity, that indicates that your pickers are being irresponsible. And you can turn around to your pickers and address that issue. If the product continuously gets damaged and it gets returned from the driver, well, the onus is on the driver to improve the quality and the way they handle the product, moving it on and off the truck. So you can find issues in the warehouse, issues with your drivers, and last but not least, you can find customers that continue to refuse entire orders or lines of orders for no reason, or maybe for a reason. Maybe the items that you're shipping them aren't authorized in that store. Maybe the customer is just a complete pain. Either way, with some level of return reporting, even if you're doing it manually off of the returns that are written on a piece of paper on the invoice, you will know what trends are developing that are causing these returns to be prevalent. Point number 5, and the last and final point, you need to have a designated return area in your warehouse. I can't tell you how many of my customers, they get the product off the truck and then they just take it directly to a pick slot without any level of auditing. The issue with doing that is you have no way to reconcile what was brought off the truck against the digital fingerprint of what actually happened on the truck. And for those of you doing paper, if you're returning the product automatically, you've got no idea where that product came from. How did it even become a return? Is a product good to sell? So most of my distributors, they have a quality hold section in the returns. Somebody goes and audits that return section. They compare it against what was from the refusal codes, and then they move that product back into its pick slot. So having a designated return area is extremely important. A lot of my customers don't actually have the physical space to have a designated return area. Well, even having a set of shelves on the corner of the warehouse where the return items are placed and then validated and audited every single day, that's a start. The point is, unless you have a person that's waiting at the warehouse to receive those trucks coming back from their routes, you need to have the returns be unloaded, placed on a shelf, right? And then you need to have somebody come and audit those returns by route. That's the other key nuance here. I do not recommend grouping all the returns from all your different routes together in one pile, because it becomes so much more difficult to figure out exactly where those returns came from. If you separate them by route, you can reconcile by route. It makes your sample size a lot smaller, and it makes the accuracy of what you're counting against what you're physically seeing that much more accurate. But the point of this video isn't to tell you to buy Lace Up. The point of this video is to demonstrate to you that without a system to capture returns digitally and map them back to physical inventory, you will have more inventory mismatches. Your inventory will become less and less accurate over time. Not just that, the pickers that are picking inaccurately will continue to pick inaccurately. You will never find who is culpable for picking chocolate instead of vanilla. You will never find which of your pickers just doesn't even care what they're looking at when they're picking an order and costing you a significant amount of money. Last but not least, you'll never find the customers that are generating all of the returns for your business and all of this extra processing time to return those returns back to inventory. So overall, if you implement a digitized way to do your returns and you implement a way to map those returns to the physical inventory in a corresponding location, and then you have photo evidence and digital evidence against the physical invoice, there is no possible way to not track the genesis of every single return, which means ultimately your inventory is more accurate, your costs of doing returns goes down, your drivers will damage less product, your pickers will pick less incorrect cases, and last but not least, your business will be more profitable. Anyways, if you agree or disagree, let me know down in the comments below. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you want lace up, hit us up. I'll be here to help. Apart from that, I look forward to seeing you next video. Take care.